Welcome to the NWI.com Political Roundtable for Thursday, July 12th. I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor of The Times. Joined with me, Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor of The Times. Our sympathies go out to Mark Kiesling, who can't join us. His mother passed away over the weekend, and so he is out of the office, but hopefully he'll be back soon, and we want to pass along our deepest sympathies to his family. Starting out this week, the Crown Point City Council did something interesting. They actually rejected an interlocal agreement that was pushed for E91 consolidation in Lake County. And they not only rejected that agreement, but they also sought to have their attorneys challenge the consolidation on constitutional grounds, that it's kind of an unfunded mandate from the state, that the state can't mandate that that the county consolidate its E911 services.
And that's a pretty interesting thing. You know, what's at stake here is the ultimate, who you're going to call in question. Well, obviously it's not Ghostbusters, but the question is, who's going to provide the service? Is this going to be done at the county level as the state mandates for more efficient operation? We saw that with the, for instance, with the 9/11 response in New York. The 9/11 Commission said, here's what you have as a problem with, what we have here is a failure to communicate, basically, with different garbled frequencies and different dispatchers and all of these things. So Indiana's take on that was to say, okay, let's consolidate at the county level, and every county has to do it by the end of 2013. And then the problem comes with, how do you pay for it? Because the municipalities, and especially in Lake County, where there are so, many municipalities, so you have, what they call PSAPs, public safety answering points. You have so many of these that each one is paying its own freight. Well, you take the burden off of them, and that dollar doesn't translate to the county that would now be providing the joint service. So, the whole fight over this is simply how to pay for it, and
because they're currently getting subsidies from the state for the to provide the services,
which doesn't cover the whole cost. This is on your phone bill. A little 911 surcharge. You'll find it with many other surcharges and taxes, but that's where that comes from. Part of the problem is the county's trying to do so much at the same time, upgrading equipment at the same time as establishing, they're talking 2 news centers. Probably one would be cheaper, but and then use Porter County as a backup.
And there's kind of 2 factors at work here. One is what you mentioned, which was the cost and how to pay for it. The other is maintaining the quality of service, and the one thing you could say for local dispatchers is they know those city and town roads like the back of their hand, and they can instantly tell you where a call's coming from, where to go, and so you move to a county-wide, a little different. You're not going to get that
well,
to the same degree.
maybe. But there's another trade-off here. Is how often do you have a car chase that goes from one jurisdiction to the next, where you could just have the same dispatcher handling that very fluidly with a consolidated thing, rather than having to call each other back and forth,
or severe weather coming through,
exactly. Boom, there you go.
Point. Sure.
And really, we're dancing around the main issue here is the unfunded mandate thing. And this is a perfect test case to say, this is something that the state mandated. It didn't throw the dollars behind it. It just said, hey, you got to do it. So, well, why not? The Mayor Uran is a former police officer, so we shouldn't be surprised there that he'd want to keep a local control. But we'll see what happens.
We will see. Our next topic, moving on, Jesse Jackson Jr., something we talked about a couple weeks ago, when it first came out that he was taking a leave, and we actually editorialized in the Times criticizing his office and the congressman himself for not being more forthcoming immediately about him taking a leave, because he took his leave, I believe, on June 10th, was when he took his leave, and it wasn't until 2 weeks later that they told people, oh yeah, he's not.
By the way, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So now it's been basically a month later, and now we finally have an update on his condition, but it still isn't. There's still a lot of mystery surrounding it. It was termed that he is being treated for a mood disorder, which could be.
Yeah, what the heck
things.
is that?
Well, it could be several things. It could
Yeah,
be it could
I
be
mean,
depression. It could be bipolar. It could be, manic depression. There's a lot of things that fall under this
right,
umbrella
absolutely.
of mood disorder.
And I understand he's a patient, and you don't necessarily want to tell everything about a patient, but he's also the public's employee,
Yeah.
and therefore you want to know, okay, what's the deal here? This is an election year. Do we need to prepare to elect somebody else?
Right.
What's going on?
Right, and you want to know his fitness to serve his constituents long
Right.
term. And one of the curious things that the timing of the release of information, one of the curious things was when his office originally said yes, he's taking a leave. They timed that announcement just as the deadline had passed to file to run as an independent
Right.
in November, so that he basically does not have that kind of challenge.
Right, and you also have to remember that the reason he, not he, but his handlers, his staff and his family said, here's the deal with him, is the mood disorder. They got a lot of pressure from the Democratic leadership in Congress, both the House and Senate.
Right.
Weighing in on him.
Right, you had Dick
what
Durbin,
would he have
Nancy
done otherwise?
Pelosi,
Right.
others, very prominent Democrats, people who are usually typically would be allies.
Yeah,
of,
and in this case, the family and the staff both have to say, look, Congressman Jackson is noted for being responsive to constituents, and now we're doing the opposite. So
Yeah.
It's time.
Yeah, and it is in contrast to, as we mentioned in the editorial a couple weeks ago, Senator Mark Kirk in
Right.
Illinois, who suffered the stroke, and we immediately got an update on his condition, and we've gotten pretty regular updates on his progress as he recovers.
Right, and good for him that he is recovering so well.
Okay, well, moving on to kind of sticking in the realm of politics, but moving over to Indiana, one of the hottest races. Obviously, we have a hot governor's race, but we also have a hot U.S. Senate race between Republican Richard Mourdock, who ousted sitting Senator Richard Lugar in the spring primary. He is facing Joe Donnelly, who is our 2nd District, I believe, congressman. Currently, and now seeking to take that Senate seat, and it's looking to be quite the challenge and the pickup opportunity for Democrats that they haven't really seen. I mean, Lugar really hasn't been challenged. 6 years ago, the Democrats didn't even run anyone against Lugar.
Right.
So this is quite the switch.
It is, and what's funny is, so Evan Bayh decides not to run for the Senate, and then that sets up a chain of events that, and decides at the last minute. So that sets up a chain of events to let the Republicans capture a Democratic seat.
Right.
And now here we are, with the Democrats having a chance to capture, what's been a Republican seat for decades, really.
Yeah. And we are seeing outside money start to come in.
Right.
To this race.
Right. You might not see it here.
Right.
So much because it's just being put into cable buys, and
Right.
How many people watch cable anymore? But with the
Right, yeah.
telecommunications deregulation.
Yeah, if you have satellite, if you have just regular over-the-air broadcast
Right.
television, you're not going to see
this.
you're not going to see any of the ads
But-
that the rest
but,
of the state's seeing.
Yeah, but this is Karl Rove coming into Indiana as one of the 7, as I recall, states that are being considered battleground states.
American Crossroads.
Exactly.
places. Yeah.
So I think if I remember right, they were between them putting $70 million into this round of ad buys, and by ad buys we meaning buying television commercials primarily. So that's pretty interesting to see. They see that this race is so much in play. you know, it looks like it's going to be a close one.
Yeah, we saw when we see the Donnelly campaign launching their own ad by hitting Mourdock for some of the things that he said about bipartisanship. That bipartisanship is when the other side comes over to our side, and
Right.
and his talking about trying to contrast Donnelly's ability to work across the aisle, as a more conservative Democrat, which he has been in Congress.
Right. I mean, and that's what's pretty interesting is, it's harder to criticize him for his actual actions.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're doing is they're, trying to tie him in with, the Democratic leadership that he hasn't necessarily followed.
Yeah, and then the other issue that the Donnelly campaign is really hitting Mourdock on is the Chrysler Bank, the challenge to the Chrysler
Right.
bankruptcy, which is now kind of seen, in 2020 hindsight, as probably not the best decision for Mourdock, because Chrysler has bounced back so well, as has the rest of the American auto industry.
Yeah, which is pretty remarkable, and what's
Yeah.
pretty crummy economy still.
Yeah.
To see that, so
Yeah.
it'll be interesting. We'll see what happens.
Right. Well, that's all the time we have this week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next week on another Political Roundtable.